No one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Glory of Golden State Gaming. And with me, as always, the Dracula to my Renfield, Vespacian.
Hi, everybody. That's a good one. Are you planning to see that movie? It just came out, right?
I am planning to see it, but it's a Nick Cage movie, so it's going to be just fantastic because Nick Cage is the best actor known to man. But I'll see it eventually. I don't know if I'm going to see it in the theaters, but it looks interesting. But anyway,
yeah. Today
we're going to talk about. So there was a big announcement in the Ninth Age community. There was a announcement that the project is going to push for a version 2. We are core rule set. We are version 3. I'm sorry. We are in version 2, and we are pushing for a version 3. And they're talking. It's pretty. The statement was pretty vague, but what I got from it was they're pushing for a little more streamlined game design. And building off of that, what did you get from it?
Yeah, I think it was. First of all, a little context is that there was supposed to be a big The Old World from GW announcement at Warhammer Fest this last weekend, right? So I think not an accident that this big announcement from the project came out just before that was supposed to happen. Now, it turns out that the Old World announcement from Games Workshop was kind of a non-announcement because essentially they showed 2 resin models, right? And said that they weren't going to do much anytime soon.
Yeah. Actually, coincidentally, I just released a video about the Old World announcement and my thoughts on it. If you would like to look at that video, click the link right above my head. I'll take you directly there. Okay. But you're right. There was 2, nice looking models, but not a whole lot. A lot of more vagary. There was some definition around the base sizes and stuff like that. But that's interesting. But that's beside the point. We're talking about the Ninth Age. It's good.
So they're announced. It's good. I think it's good. They didn't give a lot of details. Basically, what they said was, we've now been in gold for 5 years. Through that time, we've gathered a lot of data, had a lot of insights, and some of those insights have led us to believe that there are just kind of inherited deficiencies in the core rules that, require more aggressive, fixing, right? So with a goal of having a game that is streamlined to a certain degree. And so it's pretty vague, but I think at least it has like a problem statement or, to it. And when it's going to happen, what it's going to look like, what it means for the labs, all that kind of stuff. Anybody's guess at this point, but kind of exciting that there's, a path forwards to it. And you and I have talked about the importance of streamlining and what it can do for this game. And so, look, I'm excited for them to take a swing at it. Who knows how it will turn out, but it seems like a good effort to go through.
Yeah, I'm definitely reading this statement, and it's very bittersweet for me. As you said, I think really taking another look at the core rules, streamlining. It's super heavy right now. That's really what they need to do, but it's a little bitter that we don't get to. We had this ball rolling of redoing all the army books, redoing all the LABs into a new system, and that we're kind of going to have to not complete that. We're going to have to push that aside when we're halfway done with it, which is a little sad for me, especially players that really play armies that are maybe never going to have an LAB. But you're right. The longer run is to streamline this game, make it more of a better game, and this is the first step to getting there. So for me, it's just bittersweet. I'm happy. I'm still on board. It's just a little bittersweet.
I don't know that I'm just reading it myself again. I don't know that I think you're inferring that the lab process will stop. I think it's very possible that the lab process will continue to roll on, just timing, scope, et cetera, may change, right?
If the core mechanics are changing, the LABs that they're making will have to be retrofitted or redesigned to fit that new core system.
I think that it's the question for me is scalpel or chainsaw.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think that if you go in and you try to fix some of the things that I think everybody acknowledges are a bit lopsided, like single model mechanics, for example, right? That's one that inherently in a game of millimeters, and wheels and things like that, single models have a huge advantage that, despite a lot of work by the project to try to kind of move the needle, has continued to persist, right? So you kind of need to dive into the core rules of how a single model moves, interacts with things like, terrain, all that kind of stuff. But to me, that's kind of a scalpel. I don't think that you need to completely annihilate the movement phase rules to fix that problem, right? I think people have talked about some fairly simple things to fix that. So is it a scalpel, which is you look at 2.0, go in and do some thoughtful fixes, or is it like a grounds up redesign? In which case, I don't know. Again, it all depends on the scope. I don't know.
It's all very exciting. It makes me a little nervous, but again, it's a mixed bag of emotions for me. We'll see what it turns out. I'm excited for it nonetheless. Yeah. Anyway, let's get on to the battle report.
Okay.
That shoot, I don't want to I guess I'm being a little too negative. I'm really excited for it. I'm it's a lot of change.
I don't think you're being too negative. I think that it's a lot of change. They didn't give us a lot of information, so there's a lot of kind of don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's unfair. Yeah.
But let's jump into the battle report. We are on to round 3 of the North American Masters. Vespacian himself is in the thick of it. 2 small losses, I believe you got in the first 2 rounds. You got one big loss, one small loss.
8 and then an 8 and a 4. So sitting on 12 points after 2 games. Could be worse. Could be better. Definitely.
And you get paired into Pablo with the ONG. He's really pushing hard, really trying to make a ONG gunline list work really well, and he's having a lot of success. But let's see here. We're playing in Circle, King of the Hill. If you are interested in Vespacian's list, please click the link right above my head. It'll take you directly to the round 1 matchup where we go over his list in a little more detail. But let's look at Pablo's list, which is always a long, actual physically a long list. It's got the Warlord General, Feral Orc Warlord on a boar with the Omen of the Apocalypse. Triple Goblin Witch Doctor, all of them adepts. Witchcraft, Thaumaturgy, Pyromancy, a Goblin Chief BSB with the Mazazappin Bow and a BSB, 30 Goblins, 30 Cave Goblins, both with 2 Madgets, 20 Goblins with bows and 1 Madget, 20 Goblins that are Forest Goblins, the bows and the skirmish setup with them, 10 Mounted Headbashers, double Nasher Wrecking Team, 2 Goblin Raiders, 3 catapults, 2 of them are splatters, one's a git launcher, a skewer, and a gargantua with a web launcher.
Yeah. So somehow, with 20 Pathfinders and almost max bows, I'm now 3 games into Masters and face 3 armies that outshoot me.
Exactly. You have run into the first 3 lists of the ones you don't want to face, which is really funny.
Yeah. Funny is the word for it. No, I mean, it's an interesting. I've not played an ONG list like this before, and I was actually, was looking forward to playing Pablo, despite being at many tournaments with him over the years, NATC, several others. I've never played him, so looking forward to getting a chance to face Pablo across the table. I think overall, I don't love this matchup. He's got much more robust scoring than me. Obviously, the Mad gets all the shooting. Pyro, Witchcraft are all super tough for my list style.
It's very true.
And it's gonna be a tough one. This one.
Yeah, you marked it as a yellow in your little pregame thoughts here.
Yeah, I think I said yellow because I do think that there are some positives in this matchup. One is that the Avatar, can be really big. He can fight that Warlord. He can cause a lot of trouble for him. The second is that he's got to bunker all of those characters, right? So much of his list is those 4 characters, the 3 wizards and the BSB, and he's got to bunker them in a kind of a squishy goblin bunker that I can hit on 2s and wound on 4s, right? So
yeah.
I felt like there was some risk for him there. I felt like there was I felt like an open matchup, but there was some risk basically.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't think of that. You're very right. You're very right. This first image is marked deployment.
Yeah, so we were in Circle and King of the Hill. So I picked the water feature there for me to defend. I liked that. He has an impassable across from it. And it was kind of largely in my deployment zone. So, by the way, he won the roll for sides.
Okay.
and picked that side with a big center, as you usually expect. Those who are astute will notice that this is the same table as I played on round 1. And so we were back there. And I had the big flanks. So I like that water feature because it was largely in my deployment zone. I felt like I could defend it well. He picked the field in the middle, being just across from his hill. Essentially, I felt like that was, I guess he felt like he could defend that pretty well. So, and then for my deployment, you've got my Force Guard on the left. We'll go left to right. Force Guard, I ended up scouting the Pathfinders there. You've got another Force Guard unit. I've got them wide because of the catapults, obviously. And then you got a Lancer unit. A Huntsman unit, excuse me. You've got a Pathfinder unit scouted there. The BSB's Blade Dancers, the Avatar, my big Archer unit, which has both of my mages in it. My Heath Hunters, the vanguarding ones, and then over on the right-hand side is my last Forest Guard unit, the ones with spears, and the other Huntsman unit.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then
did you drop everything to go first? Did you drop everything to go first?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and this is his response. Interesting.
Yeah, so he's got the Gargantula over there. I think he's using that as essentially like a distraction, kind of threaten. He's got one of his Wolf Rider units. I believe there's a Mangler kind of over there out of shot as well.
Way on the left, yeah.
Yeah. And then he's got his 2 30 by units there with the spears and the 2 Madgets. He's got his Creepers, the kind of bunker unit there. He's got, I can't remember, I have no recollection of which War Machine is which, but he's got 2 War Machines in the ruins, another War Machine up on the hill, and then he's got a...
and then his boar unit in the back.
Those are his boars with his Warlord, and then his 20-man bow unit that's not the Creepers.
Yep.
And then another Mangler Squig over on the right.
Far right here, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
so deployed pretty central. I was a little surprised. He has Relentless on those goblins, so I guess he was just thinking he'd play the long game, but he didn't really have a unit sort of well positioned to go after that, the water feature, my terrain feature, right? So I was a little surprised by that, but otherwise felt like he took advantage of his terrain with the hill and the ruin back there.
Yeah, that makes sense. The next image here is top of 1. So this is you moving.
Yeah, so you can see I kind of just redressed my lines. I'm going with shooting options on the left to take out his Mangler Squig. I really can't have that thing bouncing around over there.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm kind of in the middle, trying to position for shooting opportunities. I'm in the forest with my archers, so I get cover. Yeah, that's basically it. Although I'd kind of shuffle my spearman over on the right hand side, just so that he can't shoot at me, basically. And I want to that's my unit that I'm thinking, well, if I do have a shot at that field, which I probably don't, but if I do, that's the unit that I think is going to have a shot at it. So
interesting.
Yeah, so kind of hoping to draw his attention the other way and maybe do an end run with that spear unit. So
Gotcha. Next image is bottom of 1 movement. Before we go into his movement, what was your results on shooting? It looks like you got rid of 1 Mangler Squig over here.
Yeah, I got 1 Mangler Squig, and it looks like I did a decent amount of work on one of those 30-man Goblin units, that one right there. Just with his deployment, that was basically the only unit that I had as like a decent target, essentially. And then he's come up and has chaffed my huntsman on the left. And he's moved forward pretty aggressively with the rest of his army. His placement of the boars, I guess, was because he didn't want me to shoot at him turn 1, but he kind of boxed him in by putting him behind, between his artillery and his bowmen. So what that meant was his bowmen actually, I think, marched off of the hill because they had no good shots and tried to open up some room for the boars. So early doors, those boars were not able to use their movement to the fullest, which I felt was an advantage to me. So, yeah.
And next image is top of 2. In his shooting phase, looks like he didn't do a whole lot. Did you lose any units?
Disagree. So if you zoom in,
on those
right here, archers.
Yes.
Yeah. So his first shooting, and then the other thing that you need to zoom in on is the avatar, and the pile of wound markers next to the avatar.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So actually had a real rough shooting phase, and then also the. Am I right about that? The Blade Dancers too, I think. If you zoom
they went 1 wide.
Oh, they went wide. Right. Yeah. That's right. Never mind. Yeah. So basically, he has a lights out shooting phase. He hits with like both of his catapults, and the skewer, and between all of those, he kills. So what was it? I had 18. So he's killed like 10 of my archers. So big chunk out of my shooting phase there. And he's done 3 total wounds to the avatar in the bottom of 1. And these are all hitting on 5s, right? So pretty rough round. All is not lost though. I felt like I had some options. So one of the things that was good was I was able to get my huntsman. I passed my frenzy, and then I was able to get my huntsman out of the arc of the Gargantula. I liked that positioning quite a lot. He couldn't shoot them really, and it creates some problems for his Gargantula because basically it just doesn't have a lot of room to move. And then I moved my my reavers up there, and actually in retrospect, and you'll see this in the next picture, I did this poorly, but my thinking there was he has relentless banners on his goblin units, and what I was worried about was him literally just like pushing them 15 inches straight, like kind of towards my dancers, and then shooting bunches of fanatics essentially down my lines. And I felt like if I had one more turn to kind of get adjusted and moved around, I'd be able to prevent that. That being said, he was still able to kind of take advantage. it was a little bit of bad positioning, but you'll see where he puts his goblin unit, from this perspective, right-hand goblin unit. So that goes pretty well for him. I have to bail the master, the Cosmo Master, out of the archers because candidly, I'm just concerned he's going to get shot off if he stays in that unit.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I hadn't anticipated losing over half of that unit in turn 1, so I hadn't put any eligible backup bunkers within range, right? So my Cosmo Master was essentially just sitting out there in the wind behind my Blade Dancers. This was not an ideal move from my perspective. But candidly, I just I was caught a bit off guard by the amount of damage he did in that turn 1, and I needed to try to evacuate that guy as soon as possible. So this is what I came up with. Not great. I mean, honestly, not great. But this is what I came up with. So yeah, I was a bit on the back foot here based on that turn 1 shooting.
Okay, well, let's move forward and see what happens. This is a big jump. This is bottom of 5, so a lot's going to happen.
Yeah, and sorry for this. As you could see by the way that things were going in that early point, I was struggling in the beginning and needed to kind of focus here. So if you go back, I can give you a little bit more of a logic leap of what happened. So essentially, over on the left-hand side, I get I managed to take out that chaff unit, and in the center, I do start doing what I said I was going to do, which is I start targeting his bunker, and I actually managed to get a quite solid amount of damage on it, and it's either this turn or in the following turn. I get a lucky panic on it.
Oh wow!
And it's so his general wasn't there, so it was discipline 8 rerollable, which is not an unfailable check by any means. But he did flee, which that helped a lot and took some pressure off. In his turn 2, he does 2 more wounds to that avatar, right? And he actually does manage to kill my Cosmo Master. So I'm in a pretty tough space. I've got the avatar down to 1 wound. I've lost a substantive amount of my shooting and most of my magic phase. So pretty rough around the edges. And what I was telling you about earlier, I didn't kind of take into account the fact that his goblin unit could actually, the one on the right from our perspective, could just come around those reavers with a mark, turn, and then launch those the mad gets towards my lines, and it's actually that kills the Cosmo Master. One of the mad gets him. Yeah. So was not great. So I'm looking at end of turn 2. I've lost the majority of my magic phase. My general's almost dead, and I haven't done a ton. I've done okay, but but then this is where things actually start to turn around, starting around turn 3, with that panic check on his bunker that flees, takes some pressure off, and that sequence of events, the Gargantua kind of retreats backwards. So I use those huntsmen on the left, and my avatar are sort of positioned up near that impassable, and I take some long charges with the avatar and the huntsman essentially into his artillery park, right? Okay. So they're sort of positioned up next to that impassable terrain, and I take some long charges because I'm like, look, I'm gonna get 20'd if I don't do something here. The avatar is just sitting out in the middle of nothing. He's going to get shot off the board. I got to do something to kind of relieve the pressure. And I think when I say long charges, I think the avatar was like an 8 or a 9, and the huntsmen were like a 9 or a 10. So they're not unmakeable, but they're certainly not on average, right? And I make them both.
Ooh.
And what that allows me to do with the positioning where his bunker fled to is it actually lets me get the avatar takes off one of his artillery and then overruns into the bunker.
Oh,
right. And the huntsmen start bouncing through the artillery kind of down his line, right? So some really positive things there. In the middle, I think Pablo maybe was feeling a little bit overconfident, but I felt like he had made some really good aggressive moves early, but then he kind of just sat in the middle with the Warlords Boar unit, the 2 Goblin units, and they just kind of sat in the middle, and they didn't necessarily push in, into what I had over on the left. So now you can kind of fast forward, and I'll show you what's ended up happening. So there you can see my avatar all the way across the board.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and there, I know that this frustrated Pablo quite a lot, but I felt okay about it after the way he was rolling 5+ in his first couple of shooting phases. I started rolling a lot of 5+ on my avatar's Aegis save. So I think there were like 2 or 3. You remember he's on like 1 wound left.
Yeah.
And I have no way to heal him, right? So there were 2 or 3 hits and wounds that he had from either like a blaze or like a skewer or something like that, where he hit and wounded, and then I made that 5-up Aegis, and it was like he just hung on with that 1 wound. And now you can kind of see how. So between the bloody all of his shooting, his pyro, and his madgets and everything like that, he does manage to pick up all the pathfinders. I ended up having to use my forest guard for chaff, on his gargantula there on the left hand side. So essentially, I'm down to the avatar. I do eventually lose the huntsman in his backfield as they were cleaning up the artillery, right?
Yeah.
I lose the archers, but you can see I've got my blade dancers with the BSB, right? I've got the baby mage, the shamanism apprentice is sitting there next to his boar unit. You can kind of see him
next to his right here. Gotcha.
Yeah. And I do remember my end run idea with the spears. Look at those spears sitting in that field.
They made it.
They made it. And so this was a kind of a climactic moment here. The avatar does survive the battle. Everything he was starstruck in this game, and he managed to make it through, having cleaned up the bunker, half of the artillery park. It's just stormed across the board with 1 wound left, just skewer shots just pinging off of him, and staggered across the finish line.
That's awesome.
The blade dancers started to really do work. You can see, like, between them, they were starting to really chew through his units that he had in the center there. Unfortunately, Gargantula makes like an 11 or a 12-inch overrun into their rear in bottom of 5 or something like that. And so at the end of the game, and I ended up, I think, having to use that mage to chaff his boar unit or something like that. Yeah. But at the end of the game, I think that there's like an avatar with 1 wound, that spear unit on the objective, and my BSB.
Jeez.
is all that I have left, right?
Yeah.
But I did get half points for their Gargantula because the blade dancers wailed on him pretty solidly. I killed all of his bunker, almost all of his artillery, and I got a bunch of points off of his goblin unit, like that one in the middle there.
Yeah.
I think I finish up somehow, and so ultimately it ends up being a
10-10, and you both got this objective. He got this unit into the water.
He didn't make it.
Oh, wow.
Into the water. Yeah, he was just out. I think he'd used his relentless earlier, right? And so he was like 2 inches out of making it in there. Even with congos and everything like that, just was barely out. And the spears, he did. I think he like put a skewer into them or a splatter or something like that. Like he tried his best, but he just couldn't get those spears off the objective in the last turn. So despite the fact that I think I had like, less than 10 wounds on the table at the end. I'd kept my BSB and my general alive with help, which helped, right? And I'd actually ended up cleaning quite a lot of his points up. So it was a 13-7 that turned into a 10-10.
Wow. Okay, so that's a much tighter game than I thought it would be at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good lesson that like there's still everything to play for. I think that I caught some unlucky breaks early. That panic check was and the Aegis saves and the Avatar kind of kept me in it. And I was just I think diligently focused on the objective, right? He was kind of swerving around and heading towards all my points, and he really managed to pick up a lot of them. But that that spear unit kind of just slipped past his nets and managed to get in there. So yeah.
Anything you look back on in this game and you're like, I wish I would have played that differently?
No, I don't. I think, maybe the one thing I would have considered, I guess I just, with hitting on 5-ups and everything, I didn't think he would do so much damage to the Avatar. Like I was legitimately concerned about my units, but I just didn't see the Avatar getting hit that badly. So I think, looking back, I might have put the same feedback on this same table that I had from game one, which was I should have put him closer to the impassable on the left.
Yeah.
So that I could have, evacuated him there. He can fight a Gargantula, for example. And so I think maybe I would have been better served with him where those huntsmen are, kind of up, on the left-hand side where he could easily move, out of range of that or out of arc of the artillery. That probably is one thing I would have done differently. I think I probably should have conged those reavers when I did that move in turn 2
up here.
Yeah. I think that if they had literally been exactly there but been in a conga line, right, kind of along the axis of the board, that would have prevented, they would have actually done what I wanted from them, which was to prevent him from getting those maggots into my line that turn. Right? As it was, I essentially wasted them to stop one set of maggots when I should have been able to stop 2.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now that being said, getting those maggots out early enough so that I can shoot them off, and there was like losing the wizard is obviously a huge deal. I would have loved to have had him for the long game, but then again, like hindsight's 2020. If he'd had those maggots and then released them in like turn 3 or 4, like it could have been worse for me. I have no idea. Like I don't know, but I think in retrospect that move stands out as poorly executed on my part, at least based on the objective that I was trying to achieve with it.
Fair enough.
So yeah.
All right, interesting. Another really good game. You're sitting at 22 points after 3 games, so below average, but not crazy below average. Yeah, we'll see what you get round 4. I'm excited to see the rest of these games. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.